it ended up being a long time because like we had to do Q&A and it was a long conversation. It ended up being the 2-hour conversation between me and Mordechai ben David. If you don't know who Mordechai ben David is, Mordechai ben David is probably the #1 speaker. I told him, I said, MBD, I said, I don't know if you realize, you are the Michael Jordan of singers. This is his real response. He says, who's that? I said, what? He said, I think he's like a ball player, right? I said, who's that? Okay, again, anyhow, I felt like not Jewish, like I knew who Michael Jordan was. So, and you have to understand, MBD is like he's in his 70s, and he's, long beard, long peot, and he's a very sincere, pious person. So we were talking, we ended up being very vulnerable. Everyone was being very open. It was really a wonderful night. And I ended up I sat through the songs, he's singing Someday, it was great. Anyhow, he says, I want to tell you something about myself. He says, I am one of 4 brothers. He says, you cannot imagine how shy I am. I said, what? He says, of all my 4 brothers, I had by far the least chance to sing. I am so unbelievably shy that I think maybe for the first 10 years, he needed to take like a little drink in order to be able to get on the stage. He says, you don't understand. To sing and to speak, I was even shyer. You can't imagine. He said, maybe 10 years ago, this man singing for over 50 years is like on top of the world. Maybe 10 years ago, I started to get rid of my nerves of standing on a stage. I said, are you kidding me? I said, I grew up listening to you. Like the whole Jewish world grew up listening to MBD, Mordechai ben David. He was the man. He says, you cannot imagine how shy I am. He says, recently, a group of men asked me to give a little shiur, a little class, and I give it in Chassidut. And then one of them asked to record it. It's recorded on TorahAnytime. He says, I can't believe that I'm able to give a class that people are listening to because I never in my life thought that I could ever speak in public. I said, you have to be kidding me. For those of you who don't know what MBD is, it's like, I don't want to give some non-Jewish example because it's not going to come out right. But what? You were crazy shy? He says, I was crazy shy. And I still am crazy shy. He says, to this day, I'm never chazan in shul because I'm too shy. I said, you have to be joking. I said, can I share this to the world? He says, yeah, no problem. I said, imagine you're a little kid and you grow up shy. And you think in your mind, your parents are telling you, you got to speak up. You got to talk. You're not going to have any friends if you're not shy. How are you going to get married if you're not shy? How are you going to get anywhere if you're shy? And all of a sudden, the kid starts to feel like self-conscious about their shyness. It's not the same thing as a sin, but sometimes to a kid, it feels worse than a sin because it feels like, I'm not going to be able to get anywhere. And I said, wow, I'll tell you something funny. When I was a kid, I was also shy. They're like, nah. I'm like, yeah. I said, for a couple of years, when I was in yeshiva, after high school, post-high school, I never made a speech till I was 20. And post-high school, I said I was in Bet Midrash, the rabbi would give shiur, people would raise their questions, ask a question. I would only ask them afterwards. I would never raise my hand in class for a couple of years. Because I was so meticulous that the question had to be perfect and had to sound smart. And I was afraid that my position of being one of the better boys, if I ask a dumb question, I'm not going to have that position, so I wouldn't speak. I said, one time in yeshiva, there was a boy leaving yeshiva. They do something called a Sudat Pereda, like a party for him to go. And they have 40 boys. And I had to speak. I was very close to this guy. I had to speak. It was pretty much, I think, the first speech of my life. And I was so scared to speak. Now, it's the type of speech, 40 guys in yeshiva at 12 o'clock at night. It's the type of speech you're supposed to open up a book, say, oh, wow, that's a nice idea. Get up and say it. I prepared for 10 hours. I'm not joking. I was so scared. I prepared for 10 hours. I walked. My cousin was in yeshiva with me. We walked. We paced back and forth, saying over the speech again and again. It's a heck-ass speech. It's it's a bunch of boys that are barely paying attention. I prepared for 10 hours because I was so shy and so scared that it wasn't going to come out perfect. And all of a sudden, it came out pretty good. And next thing you know, another boy left yeshiva and I had to speak again. And then another boy left yeshiva and I had to speak again. And then another one had to speak again. Then I got married and they asked me to come back to yeshiva because a boy was leaving and speak again. And then next thing you know, one thing led to another. Sometimes we think that our faults or our weaknesses define us. We think that our faults and our weaknesses become who we are. To think that I spoke Lashon Hara is bad. But for me to believe that I am now a certified Lashon Hara speaker is much worse. To think I said something disrespectful is